Hi. So I am so excited to be chatting today with David Johnson, and we have connected through the ethers of the internet with some of my favorite common denominators to have with somebody else. In short, we both share a love for Tibetan Buddhism. We both identify as much as we would identify with a label as highly sensitive people, as introverts, although I would call myself a little more of an extroverted introvert. And it's been weeks in the making that we've been able to have this conversation. So I'm thrilled. I hope that all of the people that are watching gain some insights about themselves and about other highly sensitive and introverted people in their life. So, hi, David.
Hi there, Melissa. Thanks for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. I'm so excited about this. So, I suppose to start, maybe we can go back to the beginning a little bit and just kind of dip into when is it that you first realized that the way that you experienced life was, say, a little different than other people, or that you kind of knew that you were on this unique life path that you're on?
Yeah, good question. I've got memories as I sit here listening to you now of during my childhood sitting alone um, under a tree at the bottom of our back garden in Britain. I remember that. I've been called a sensitive person on numerous occasions. I can't remember too many details, but I know I've always graduated towards quieter environments, less going on. I mean, we've recently moved to Hawaii, and of course, the beach is a big part of life here. And I'm happy. I notice I'm happy on the beach if I just take myself to a quiet corner and just watch and listen. But if it's buzzing around me, I'm happy to appreciate it as that's the Hawaii life.
Mm.
But it's not my most comfortable place to be. So lots of little anecdotal bits and pieces here and there, but I've also always questioned it because HSPs, introverts, really until very recently have not they I don't feel as though they've been really recognised out there, and so I've always questioned. I felt as though it's right, and when I'm around like-minded people, I slot into it and I'm fine. But when I get into regular life, I thought, hang on, is there something wrong with me here? Even to the extent, for a number of years, I lived in a Tibetan Buddhist community in South Wales in Britain, and at times it was very busy, and at times it was very quiet, and I loved the quiet times. But I found myself questioning: Is this right? Am I running away from something? Is
Mm.
something going on here? I would say no now, but at the time, it was a big question in my life.
Mm.
Am I running away from something, or is this okay to be here? So.
Yeah, and so now that you aren't living in that community anymore, you find that you still embrace that quietude and bring that appreciation for it into your more lay life per se.
Very, very much so. I need my quiet time in my life. Uh, the family that I've say married into now that I'm living here in the States are a lot more extroverted in
Mm.
general, and it's been a learning process for us just to get to my traits against the family traits and how we manage that. But
Sure.
it's sort of recognised now. If David's heading off for some quiet time or disappears for 5 minutes, he's not being antisocial. He just needs to recharge and get
Right.
his himself together. Or I might just take myself off for a day. I love riding a bike, and so I just shoot off on myself for the day. So
I'm
yeah,
totally with you.
it's being more recognised now. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, I understand that completely. I also, fortunately, I live by the beach and I
Uh-huh.
use it as a form of meditation. It is really
Right.
easy to breathe the fresh air and hear the water and feel the sand and see the
Mm,
waves. For me, it is a total sensory meditation, where it's really quite easy to let go of my mind and my thoughts and bring myself to the present moment. And um, one of my favorite meditations on the beach is considering how tiny I am in comparison to the universe, especially at
right.
night when the stars are out.
Yeah.
A few nights ago, there was this beautiful crescent moon and Venus, right next to it,
Hmm.
and I was bowled over with appreciation for my place in the universe. And I think as a highly sensitive person, that's one of the ways that the trait manifests itself as a really wonderful experience is to be able to really deeply appreciate the connectedness to the universe, to really appreciate our place in it, our tininess in it, our powerlessness and our power, kind of the paradox of the two.
Yeah, listening to you talk now, this morning I took a short walk down to the ocean here, and of course, the the Hawaiian Islands apparently are the most isolated inhabited landmass in the world. And, from the US mainland, it takes 4 to 5 hours, sometimes 6 hours, depending on where you're flying from, just to get here. And you realize the isolation of it. But I like you. I like just gaining that sense of where we are, seeing the details. It adds richness to my life, and just listening to it, I could feel it in my heart there. That the sense of where we are in the bigger picture. And I mean, here these islands are born out of volcanoes, and they are so old. I was sitting looking at these rocks this morning and thinking, years ago, centuries ago, they would have been hot lava just flowing down into the ocean. And now people, will surf by them or whatever, and probably not give them a second look. I'm not saying they don't care for them themselves,
Sure.
But it's just that sense of connecting with it in some deep way, which I feel as though I have to be also very careful who I share that with as well. You share it with the wrong person. I always remember I came out of a retreat when I was living in this centre in Wales, and somebody who'd been in the Buddhist centre for a number of years said, be very careful who you talk to. You talk to the wrong person, and any experience you've had in the last couple of weeks is going to be crushed. Yeah. And I feel so it's the same with this. I have the little details are so important for me, and it enables me, I think, to move around and live in different places a lot more, because I just look for the details. I don't worry about the bigger picture so much. And but it lends a richness, and if I share it with the wrong people, I can be crushed in seconds.
Yes, I'm with you. There is, I think, as a sensitive person, and particularly as an introvert, I think there is a sense of discernment of speaking to the audience or the person that you're engaging with in a particular way, because at least in my experience, part of living authentically as a highly sensitive person is living in vulnerability and really sharing kind of the depths of my soul and the struggles and the triumphs also, which for me a triumph can just be seeing some beautiful color palette walking by, and it delights my senses. Right. And I think you're absolutely right. There are many people who do not appreciate the subtlety of life or the nuances in a way where it can not feel crushing when it's kind of rejected or glossed over. And so there is something to be said about really using discretion with your audience in the way that you share the things that stir your soul, because putting yourself out there with the wrong audience can feel really depleting and kind of suck the joy right out of the experience for you.
Absolutely. And I think one of the challenges is, I think for highly sensitive people, there are a couple of challenges. One is letting those around you know what your needs are, who you are, and what your needs are. And I don't think you can always do it by just blurting it out. You have to come out gradually and let people know, especially if I remember introversion wasn't so spoken about when I got married and moved over to the States. So this was about 8 years ago now. And I think the naming of it I think it'd be fair to say, was a bit jarring in our lives. My wife's a lot more extroverted than me. And for me, it was like an affirmation. It was like a coming home, and it felt good. And I felt so I needed to name it so we could, just name our boundaries and what our different needs were. But it was because introversion hadn't been spoken about so much at that point. It was also, I think it was almost a sense that something was encroaching into our lives. Something was coming into our lives that wasn't there when we got married. Of course, it always was, but it just wasn't named. And so I think there are two sides to it. On one level, you have to be very careful and gradual about how you introduce who you are and what your needs are, if it's with somebody close to you. And then it's about setting these boundaries so that you do find the time. And if you can't find the time or you can't find the people to talk to when you feel as though you've had this experience and you just want to share it with someone, it's about developing developing tactics, if you like, strategies for being able to hold on to or keep to yourself, or have the patience to wait until you can find that time alone, because we can't always find what we want. And so it's a case of having a strategy to help you hold that and deal with it in the busyness of life, which of course for highly sensitive people can become a bit too much at times. So that's some of what I try and do in the work
Yeah.
that I do, to try and help give people strategies to
Yeah.
help them deal with it.
I love it. So while you're talking about your work, will you share a little bit more about the work that you do?
Yes, I'm a coach, life coach, business coach, helping small businesses and helping people. Once I discovered I was an introvert and extrovert, an introvert and an HSP, that's why I decided where I wanted to really take my work. Helping like-minded people deal with who they are in their daily life, whether it be family life, work life, whatever. It's what I've had to deal with in my life, so it comes from experience. And also bring in my meditation background. I find, on one level I can speak about meditation from a Tibetan Buddhist point of view with all the trappings of, an ancient spiritual tradition. But also meditation, I think, can be pulled away from that. You can strip it. Certainly, some of the meditation techniques, if can be stripped of all their religious and spiritual paraphernalia and can be used as a set of tools that you can just take out into your life and to help you navigate the ups and downs of life. And so I like to look on meditation as having two aspects. As a quiet time when you can sit at home and familiarize yourself with some aspect of meditation, whether it's just quieting the mind, whether it's dealing with impatience or dealing with difficult people. And then when you go out into your life, you can take those techniques, and it's as though you've got this toolbox. Nobody can see it, but you've got it there with you, and you can use it. It can help you. It can help you navigate. You might be in a situation that you don't want to be in, and you don't have to be in it, but for a while you have to be there. You're stuck there, meeting, whatever, and it helps you navigate that until you find that time when you can decompress and do what you need to do to look after yourself. So it's just work. It's trying to share what has been helpful in my own life with hopefully be able to help other people as well.
Yeah, how wonderful. I love that. And I love how you've found a way to incorporate this ancient practice of meditation into literally into modern life as a tool to cope with the overwhelm and the overstimulation and the overscheduling, all of the excess that we find ourselves dealing with. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, yes. And again, I think I come to some of this with a bit of hindsight. I have used it at times to help me. As I go back to the Buddhist center, one of the paradoxes of it was, although you think of a Buddhist center, meditation center, you might think of very serene and quiet, and certainly it had that aspect to it. But if you're on the working side of it, we used to have groups in for meditation courses, yoga courses, and things like that, and we would look after them. And it got busy, and we'd have, especially come the summer, people would be visiting as well to come and stay. People would come and help and work there. So you were constantly on call, looking after people. The phone was going. The phone is not a great. The phone and introverts don't get on too well all the time. So you've got this constant bombardment all the time, and then long spaces of silence. But during those busy times, I noticed, as I say this in hindsight, I would get overwhelmed. We'd get lunch out and I'd head straight back to my room. I'd forget about eating. I just needed that downtime. The paradox was I loved being there. I loved meeting all these people. It's not as though I'm against being around people. It's just, that balance. And while I was there, I would say I started using these techniques, these meditation techniques, in order to help me manage these busy periods when I was hitting overwhelm but needing to keep going because I had a job to do. So
yeah. And I think that's what so many highly sensitive people really struggle with is finding that balance between doing what they have to do, which is kind of get through life and be able to pay their bills and get their children off to school, and if they have no children, just get themselves off out into the world, which can be challenging, and balancing that with taking care of yourself. And I loved what you talked about earlier about kind of setting boundaries and in relationships, which I think as a highly sensitive person is so important. And it's something that I'm at 34 just really learning how to do. I just recently, it's really only been in the last year or two that I've discovered the term highly sensitive person and been able to feel the homecoming of knowing that I'm not alone in the way that I experience life. It has been really confusing and challenging and overwhelming for me as a highly sensitive person for a lot of the time, not really understanding why I processed stimuli so differently from other people. And when I read Dr. Elaine Aron's book, The Highly Sensitive Person, it was quite life-changing for me. It was the validation that I had been seeking from other people for so much of my life, which, knowing what I know about the way that life is, I know that validation really comes from within me. That's the only validation that matters. But when growing up in a body that's so sensitive, and being an energy reader and being able to experience things differently from other people, it was amazing to know that I was not alone in that, and to really to realize that actually 15 to 20% of the population is highly sensitive. That the way that sensitivity shows up is, it has different forms. As you said, you feel quite introverted. I know that many highly sensitive people really identify with being an introvert, tend to have a really rich inner world in terms of imagination and just inward fulfillment. I think I am a little on the other end of the spectrum in that I am I love being out in the world and kind of having an external experience, and much like you, I could be the life of the party with the right party, but the challenge for me has always kind of been making sure that I was in a place to be out in the world. I found that for me the most important thing is not the world that I'm going out into, but how I'm going, the way that I'm being in the world, kind of my presence. And so one of the things for me that was life-changing was I did a Tibetan studies program in college, and I was in Dharamsala in northern India on September 11th, and on September 12th, His Holiness the Dalai Lama had a prayer session at his monastery, which was one of the most profound experiences of my life, where he spoke about cultivating compassion, and we sat, and together this group of people, there were thousands and thousands of people there, sat and focused on cultivating an emotion of compassion for all of the people that were involved in the experience. And that was probably the first time that it occurred to me that I could actually cultivate an emotion for myself, that I was actually in control of how I felt inwardly, and that it almost felt to me like acting, like, when an actor goes out on stage and they draw upon their life experiences to cultivate an emotion to bring into the scene. That was really the first time that it occurred to me that I was doing that in my own life, and maybe not quite so mindfully, and maybe a little more in reaction to what was going on, as opposed to it being an inward expression. So for me now, I work on that. I don't have as regular a meditation process program as I would like, but I do connect with myself enough to know when I am needing to recharge, and needing to take my quiet space, and needing to go sit on the beach and look at the stars and kind of get back to it, and really cultivate my emotional set point that I'm choosing to take out into the world. And I find the more that I do it, the easier it becomes, and the more effective I am out in the world with other people, the more I'm able to uplift and inspire and support people. And so it's been a really interesting process for me, and amazing to look back on my life and realize how the synchronicities have all kind of lined up to lead me to where I am. The wisdom has always kind of come at just the right time to get me to the next place.
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. Going back to the meditation part of it, I like to look on meditation for introverts and highly sensitive people as having two aspects. On one level, there's the quiet time, the recharging, and then I think on the other side, every bit has got every emotion, I think, has got its shadow aspect to it. So for example, introverts like to have, they like to be alone. They like to be alone to recharge. So it can be very easy for me if I'm by myself for a weekend and I've had a really busy time. I'll be inside all weekend. If I've got enough groceries and things, and I don't need to go and see anybody. It's not planned, but Monday morning will come. I thought, oh, what happened? I haven't been outside. That has happened before. But I think that the other side, and I do believe that's okay. But you can then take it too far. You can want too much time for yourself, or you can get, we spend a lot of time in our heads overthinking things. And so you need some technique to get out of the story. The story is important, and I think that's one of the richnesses that HSPs have, that this what you were talking about earlier about going out and experiencing your smallness within the universe and the power of what it is around you. I think it's I wouldn't give that up for the world, that I've been able to experience that. But so at times we can get too wrapped up in these things,
Sure.
and we need some way of putting ourselves out and disconnecting from the story. And I think that's where meditation can come in, because for those who have meditated and you start looking at your thoughts, you just notice how they're a constant stream of things that come and go, come and go, come and go, however important they are, and it's not denying the importance of things that come up. We have to make decisions in life, and decisions originate from thoughts. But again, it is a thought that just passed away. You think of everything that's happened to you since you woke up this morning. It's all just gone. They're just thoughts that popped into your mind and they've gone. And it helps you disconnect from things. So I think the meditation side of it, you were mentioning the Tibetans. The Tibetan word for meditation, I don't know if you know, means to familiarize. And this idea that by constantly thinking over things over and over again, somebody said to me the other day, it's like working a muscle. We're all used in this day and age of exercising, and whether it's the gym, on your bike, or wherever you are. And meditation is just flexing that muscle, which is the mind, or the heart, as the Tibetans always have their hand on their heart when they talk about the mind. And it's about flexing that muscle and building it. And like being in the gym, it takes some effort, but it's absolutely worth it in the end. As I said, I've been around it for 25 years. I've got a lot to learn. There's a hell of a lot I don't know, but I know within myself I've benefited from it. It's given me a sense of freedom in my life that I don't think I would have otherwise. It doesn't mean that life is easy. No, I still have all the ups and downs that people have to deal with, but there's a way. It's the way that you deal with it. It's the way that you are. There's something you said earlier. I can't remember the words, but it's about the being. It's not so much about what's around you. It's about how you are with it.
Yes.
That's the crux of the matter, I think.
Yeah, for me as well. It is. It's all about the being. I know that there's sometimes, I know I have to have a conversation, or I know I have to run an errand, or I have to make a phone call, but I'm not in the right beingness to do it. And so I'll put things off. And in fact, I had it happen just the other day. I had to cancel a service, and I couldn't get the right person on the phone, and I called from an inspired moment. I was in the middle of doing a bunch of other things. It didn't logically make any sense, and I got the most lovely person on the phone who said no problem and made it all happen within a few moments. And so for me, it's really about doing things from the right state of being, as opposed to trying to make things happen from outside of myself, which feels like it's always counterproductive and kind of the hard way to do it. And
yes,
for me, what meditation has really allowed is kind of a lifting of all of the fogginess of thought and story to come back to my state of being, which is, kind of clear and open and trusting and loving and without much judgment, as much as I can. And so it for me, meditation is kind of like a reset button. It's kind of like putting a pause on the thought machine that otherwise seems to go forever. And when I unpause, I find that I'm in a new state and more equipped to handle what comes up in a loving way, which is ultimately my goal.
Right.
I think as a highly sensitive person, because I'm so sensitive to the energy around me and the energy of people around me, that it's easy to become reactive and use that as a reason for my state of being. And for me, as a coach for parents of highly sensitive children, what I'm always teaching to parents is that we must be the model for the children. If we want a child who we're lovingly guiding through life to behave in a particular way, we have to model it for them. And as a coach for parents, I feel like I really have to model it for them, because I can't be preaching this wisdom and not embodying it myself. And so for me, the way to really do it is to first and foremost take care of my state of being, and then show up in the world. Because if I let the world and the energies of the world overwhelm me, I'm not really doing myself or anyone else a service, and then I'm just living in reaction. And
you remind me of the Dalai Lama when you speak. Then the number of times he asks some question about children. Of course, he starts joking by saying, "I don't know, I haven't got any children myself." But he goes on to say this. His belief is that the parent or the elder, whoever it is, who's interacting with the child, they need to set the example in the first place. So there was that. And there was something else you said. Oh yes, that I think as well. Meditation can allow us that sense of forgiveness as well, self-forgiveness or self-compassion, however you want to look at it. From we can be reactive. I know at times as sensitive people, the sensitivity does become overwhelming, and you do hit overload, and it's kind of like shaking a bottle of Coke or something like that. Eventually the top's going to burst, whether you want to or not. And if you're aspiring to something else, it's very easy to say, "Oh, failed again here. Tripped over there. Should have done better there." And I think meditation allows you that space to say, "Okay, look, I've noticed it." Many people don't even notice that they've exploded, that they went too far that time. And you've got that awareness, you recognize it, and it's okay. That's a step forward as well. Yeah. Just recognize. I'm thinking, when people start to meditate, they sometimes think, "Oh, my mind's getting worse," and it's actually because you've stopped for a moment and looked to your mind. And many people don't. Many people don't look at their mind. Yeah. I think it's a wonderful tradition. The whole meditative thing. It's not only out of the East. The Christian traditions have been using it for centuries. It's such an ancient science that we're making use of technology now, but the technology on one level is wonderful. It's enabling us to have this video connection, and that certainly wasn't available when I was born. And but this is such a young science, and the science of the mind that meditation is centuries old. It's a millennia old, and it can offer so much. And there's nothing woo-woo about it. It's just a way of looking at the mind, familiarizing yourself with the mind, making friends with it. And you make friends and transform your own mind, and you can, bit by bit, transform those around you as well. Not intentionally. Yeah. It's just by your own being.
Right. It's one of the best byproducts, isn't it?
Right.
That you get to affect everything else around you in addition. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. It's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So, before we wrap up, I'm wondering if there are any last bits of wisdom that you'd like to share with any introverts, highly sensitive people, particularly any young people that might be watching this, any words of wisdom to your younger self or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good one. Word of wisdom to my younger self. It's a helpful perspective. I go back to, I called my business Crossing the Threshold, and it came out of my master's program was in eco-psychology, which is really about our relationship as humans with the natural world. It's not about the business of environmentally doing things right, although that hopefully would be a byproduct of it. But it's about our relationship with, and it really fits in well with, and again, in hindsight, I would say I went into this as a highly sensitive person. There are many other avenues. My wife was a kindergarten teacher, and so she went in as looking for avenues to work with young children. But the Crossing the Threshold bit came out of part of the requirement of the program was to do a vision quest, and that had long been an interest of mine, rites of passage. I've no idea where that came from. I remember as a very young person watching the, what was the movie? It was a book, Walkabout. And I was always drawn to that by this idea that some young person was out there on Walkabout doing a rites of passage. And I have no idea where any of this came from because I'd never done one and I knew nothing about them really. Anyway, one of the concepts within rites of passage work is of thresholds. You cross a threshold. As you set out on your vision, you'll cross a threshold out into the wilderness, or out into your mythical world where you're looking for your vision, however you understand the idea of vision. And, it sort of struck me that as we're looking to make changes in our lives, which hopefully we are through coaching, we're looking to cross thresholds. It's like Joseph Campbell referred to it as the hero's journey. It's a very similar idea. But then you can take it further. You step out of your front door first thing in the morning, heading off to work. You're crossing a threshold then, and you can think about, okay, what am I going to learn from today? What am I going to take out there and learn from today? And I think by looking on the world as thresholds, by seeing everything as possibilities to learn, there are always opportunities out there to learn. If I was to go back to my younger self or to younger people, and there is always a possibility to learn. There is always something. You never know exactly what's going to happen. And sometimes it requires patience. Sometimes it requires sitting. You think of the idea of vision quest. You're spending a lot of time just sitting there alone, doing whatever it is you've been told to do while you're sitting out there in the wilderness, and you go from the inspired, "Oh, I love being out here," sort of thing, to 2 days in, you think, "What the hell am I doing?" And it's cold and it's wet and etc. etc. But you bear with it, and something happens in the end. If you make the effort, it's not a case of putting your feet up and nothing will happen. You make the effort, whether it's through meditation or whatever discipline that you are doing, and you will cross that threshold. Something will happen. It might not be even what you're expecting. Expectations are dangerous as well, even within meditation. As one meditation teacher put it, who's known to many people, Pema Chodron, she speaks about just follow the instruction. Just the instruction. There's no expectation behind it. Not that I want a quieter mind, that I want to be more compassionate. You just follow the instruction. And then out of that, if you like, the threshold is crossed and things start to emerge. So stick with it.
Yeah.
It requires patience. But there's another concept in Buddhism of joyful effort, and I think that's there's a good goal. Others have shown you that there's a good goal to get to. So make joyful effort, and you'll get there.
I love that, joyful effort. I love that. I love that term. For me, the reason that it's so successful is because it really speaks to the state of being, isn't it? It's any effort that you make from a state of joy cannot be without joyful endings.
Right,
and so what a perfect way to approach anything in life, really.
Yes.
I love that. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for having this chat with me. It was so lovely to meet you in this way, and to get to chat with you and learn a bit more about your experiences and the work that you're sharing with the world. And it's always lovely to connect with other like-minded, sensitive people who just kind of get what this experience is about, living in this sort of body and way of perceiving life. And so I thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. And I hope that for the people that are watching this, that this is helpful. Will you just let everybody know what your website is if they want to learn some more about you?
Sure. It's crossing the threshold, all one word, .net. crossingthethreshold.net.
Great. And my website is leadingedgeparenting.com, where you can find all sorts of information about my coaching services, the work that I do with my mom, and lots of other videos are on that website also. So thank you, David, for taking the time to chat with me. It was wonderful. I hope we can do this again soon.
Thanks again, Melissa. I really enjoyed it. It was great fun. Thank you.